Welcome everyone to another AHA tutorial where this go around we're talking about how to build your best roadmap presentation. If you're watching this video, then you're probably already familiar with how to create strategy and maybe even how to create the reports and roadmaps that help you visualize that strategy. If not, click around. We have full tutorials and videos on both those subjects. But today we're going to focus on specifically how to align different groups of people around your strategic vision with AHA presentations. Presenting to different folks is a task that's familiar to any product manager anywhere. It's a labor-intensive and often a thankless task because different audiences require different presentations and sometimes even different visualizations in those presentations, which you then need to keep up to date as your plans progress or as your strategy changes. Also, if you're exporting visualizations out of your road mapping tool and importing them into a presentation tool, you then are working with static images, so it can be very hard to drill in for more details if you get questions. And in a lot of these presentations, you want questions, right? We want an engaged audience asking questions about your plans. Today, we're going to cover all of that. We're going to work in AHA roadmaps presentations, which answer a lot of these problems. And big picture, what we'll do today is focus on two different presentations that we put together ahead of time. One for an internal team, one for an external team. So one for executive leadership and one for customers. Two very different audiences, but same product, same data, same basic goal, which is to present on our 2021-2022 roadmap. You'll see how we make a couple different choices as we go there. If you're an AHA expert, congratulations. I'm glad you're here and watching this video as well. We have some new things that I'm going to call out in the midst of this tutorial. Just a few weeks ago, we released an update to reports and roadmaps that makes them interactive in presentations and shared web pages. That's going to be a hoot to check out. We're going to do that together. So I'll call things out for you. Let's get going here. Every time we approach a presentation in AHA roadmaps, inside or outside of this tutorial, we're going to follow the same three basic steps in the same order. They're called the ABCs of roadmap presenting. You can see them here kind of called out: audience, build, and context. ABC, audience, build, context. So first step is to focus on the audience, really tailor the presentation for the specific audience. Second is to build it out with AHA views. And then third is to give your story context, a little bit of flair. We're going to work on interactive drill-ins there and with some slide annotations. So here it is, a little more simple: audience, build, context. You'll hear me talk about this a lot today. So let's start with number one. Let's focus on the two audiences we're talking to today. This can be really helpful to draw up just a simple table to compare your audiences and what they care about and what views help communicate to those audiences best. In this case, we've got leadership. They tend to care about high-level strategy, about the direction of your product, and about delivery timelines. So are you on track to deliver your strategic vision on plan and on budget? Views that really help them is the strategic roadmap, because it shows goals and initiatives and how they link to work. Anything to do with goals. And remember, goals in AHA roadmaps have quantifiable success metrics with them. So goal metrics and progress can be really useful. And then finally, release schedule. So Gantt charts, anything showing an actual release date and whether or not your team is going to hit that date. Secondly, customers, end users, they like strategy, direction, and timelines as well, but maybe skewed in a slightly different way. So general timelines land really well with customers. Any sort of sneak peek about upcoming functionality can be very useful. And then, of course, anytime you can show how a customer has given you input on your roadmap. So maybe that's an idea in an ideas portal that has been promoted to a work item, feature, epic, or initiative. Or maybe that's just a conversation that you happen to have with a customer that inspired a whole project that your team took on. If you're presenting to customers, they're often very engaged with your product success. They want it to succeed. They've got opinions on how that can get there. And so anytime you can show that they have a seat at the table as well can be very effective. Views that help out the customer type audience is the features roadmap. It's a little more granular than other roadmaps. You can show individual features one at a time, highly customizable. We'll do that today. Customer request. So this could be, depending on what tool you're using, again, ideas or feedback or support tickets, but anytime you can highlight customer requests and link them to your roadmap, that's really useful. And then of course, mock-ups, screenshots, visuals, especially anything interactive that you can show of things that are coming up. Okay, this covers the audience step. We'll refer back to this, but it's really helpful to start here kind of in an empathetic exercise and think about our audiences and what they like. Let's jump in. I'm going to get out of this presentation and jump over to our demo account here. This is Fredwin Cycling. It's a demo workspace that I've enabled in our demo account. You can enable Fredwin Cycling for yourself if you want to tinker with data or try out, experiment with different workflows or settings. Today, I've used it to create a couple presentations. So to get here, To the presentation overview, I've navigated up to the roadmaps navigation button, clicked on presentations, and that gets me down to the presentations. Here's the two we're going to talk about today, these starred ones, one for leadership and one for customers. Let's click into the leadership one. And you remember our 3 steps, ABCs of roadmap presenting: audience, build, and context. The audience, the build, and the context. Let's start with the audience. So remember from that table, this is for an executive leadership audience. They care about high-level strategy, product direction, and release timelines. The first thing I note when I look at this presentation, even though it already has some data in it, is that it's very bland. If I was going to present this to a leadership team, I think they would expect that I had some branded colors. I'm a product manager after all, and maybe the logo for my product, that sort of thing, that would be respectful for my audience. In AHA presentations over here on the right-hand side, we have things called presentation themes, which means you can create these once and then apply them to multiple presentations. So here's that internal roadmap presentations theme. I click that, and all of a sudden you see those colors and that styling apply to this presentation. Here's a great little footer down here. Presentation themes have 2 basic slides to them. This is a title slide. I also have what's called a body slide right here. And I can edit this. I'll show you it for the next presentation. I could edit this and make changes that apply to any presentation that uses this theme. So if our logo changes or our color changes, we can apply it there. Change it once, apply it everywhere. This is a great way to think about our audience and save yourself a bit of time. Next, if I'm thinking audience, I'm also thinking high level. Let's look at the flow of this presentation and click on the grid view here. Gives us a good flow of how the presentation is structured. We built this out a little bit before the tutorial started, but obviously you could build this from scratch yourself. You can see the basic flow here. So we're going to start very high level with some strategic vision, move into product direction, and then get down into release schedule, finish with a discussion. That's a good flow. Start wide, get narrow and tactical. So by the end, by that discussion, we're going to have some really substantive question and answer right there. Missing a couple things on these slides. Let's move on to the build section. I'll click in here to our strategic vision. Right now we don't have one. That's not great for a product manager, especially someone at a strategic road mapping company. So let's add an AHA view. You're probably used to, in other presentation tools, uploading images or adding tables or shapes. You can do all that in AHA Roadmaps presentations, but the AHA view is something special. This is inserting any page, any visualization, report, or roadmap in your AHA Roadmaps account into the slide so that it's a direct link to something that's living and updating and accurate. You don't need to worry about uploading some static image and then re-uploading that static image as your data changes. As you'll see throughout the course of this tutorial, we can change how quickly things update. I'm going to add something simple right here that a lot of people overlook. The strategic vision, and I'll add the whole company strategic vision. That's a good way to get us all aligned at the very start of the presentation, is this is why we're doing what we're doing. I'll add it in there. Also, it's nice and colorful. It's good to start with that and see what our goals are there. That's a vision image. Moving on, I won't click through every slide in this presentation, but I'm going to show you a couple just because there's some interesting things to point out. This is our goals and AHA Roadmaps. Goals have quantifiable success metrics so that you can show progress towards your strategic goals. What jumps out to you on this slide, at least what jumps out to me, is this brilliant red that shows that even though, as I record this near the end of 2021, this goal is at risk. That's definitely going to be a point of discussion as we get later in the presentation. And I'll show you when we get to the context step how to anticipate some of those questions here, but that'll be worth looking at. We'll move on through some more goals and initiatives. Another blank slide here as we get to product direction is portfolio initiative. So if I'm reporting on my product roadmap, it can sometimes be helpful to start wide for an executive audience and talk about what the strategy is for our entire product portfolio. Once again, adding an AHA view here, I'll choose a page, and this time instead of vision, I'm going to add a custom roadmap that I made ahead of time. You can see right here all the roadmaps on the list. I'll select this one that I know to be correct. And there it is. You can see Fredwin Cycling, my product, Fredwin Running, and Fredwin Swimming, other products in their portfolio. And I can give that audience some context into what we're all doing the next half of the new year. You'll notice that this view overflows the container. That's fine. Once I get to presenting this, I can scroll right and left and really show the roadmap in all its glory. I don't need to condense everything down and make it hard to see unless I want to. That's an auto-fit option right down there. Okay, that looks pretty good for the build. Let's move on to the context step. So the build of a presentation is the structure of it, the AHA views or static images or tables or shapes that you add to structure it out. Context provides a little more context to your audience. It directs their eyes to specific aspects of a view. It anticipates questions, and it removes anything that's noisy, anything that you don't think would be germane to your particular audience. In this case, this is an AHA view, but instead of being a report or a roadmap, I've added a feature right here for enhanced GPS tracking. It looks like something that we want to focus on in this presentation. We've also added in the folks who are going to be responsible for completing this feature. There's myself and support. That's a good seat for me. And as you might expect, we've got ways to customize, provide context for those and styling for those images as well. In this case, I can crop images. I can change the shape from square to circular, though I kind of like circular, and just put a face to a name here for that leadership audience. Neat thing about adding in actual AHA Roadmaps records, remember these are direct links to living records in your actual AHA Roadmaps account, is that I can control what fields I show to my audience. I don't have to show them everything, which is great because they don't want to see everything. There's a lot of noise in there that's just useful for my team that's working on a feature, and I might not want to show everything if there's some fields on a feature or on a record type that are just germane to my team and our internal processes. And the way I control that is with this drop down here called Visible Fields. What you see is a link to every single field, custom or standard, on the record layout right here, and I can choose whether to include them or not. So in this case, I think a leadership team would really care about progress, and we're talking about how Kelly is the PM assigned here, but they might also want to know about the actual designer assigned to this feature and talk about how she's contributing to its progress. So I'll click those, I'll click refresh here. We'll pull in a fresh version of this feature record type, and then there you can see we are 5% completed, and Ashley Borg looks like the designer. She's really good. That'll be great. So that sort of thing. This is the sort of context I can provide for my audience. Okay, next way to provide context, next major way to provide context is when I export this presentation into a web page. A secure web page. I should talk about that first. Once I do that, once I click this button, generate a web page, AHA Roadmaps will create a random URL from which someone can access this presentation. Now, you can control what that means out here in export settings. There's a lot of ways to provide enhanced security there and say anyone can access it, or only people in my AHA account can access it, or maybe there's some SSO configuration there. But what I'm most interested about is this option right here. This is the new part. If you're the AHA Roadmaps expert, this is the new that you're going to enjoy. It's called Interactive Views, and it allows for what's called drill in for records. So if you're showing an AHA view and you get a question, or you want to provide a little bit more contextual detail, once it's in a web page, you can do that. You can click on different record types. You can see the different record types in my presentation here, and you can provide a little detail and a little pop-up that goes away when you're done providing the detail. It's called drill in. It's very nice. And you can also, just like with visible fields, control which field, standard or custom, you see in that little pop-up. So you remember back a few slides ago, we saw that at-risk goal. I think it would be really useful to, well, I think either way, we're going to get questions about why that's at risk. So let's work with the progress update custom field, where I might have provided a little bit of reasoning. And let me show you what that means. I'll update the secure web page here just so I can pull the latest information. And let's open it in a new tab. So here's that random URL. In this case, anyone with the URL can access it. And that's actually useful because in addition to being a presentation tool for me, I can present from right here. This could also be a URL that I give to my audience so that they can take things home. And then the interactive drill in that I mentioned that we're going to see right now can be something that my audience uses to self-serve, answer their own questions, that sort of thing. It can be really nice, especially if someone can't make my meeting or wants kind of a leave behind. This is a digital leave behind. Okay, we're in the presentation view here. I've got a table of contents. I can skip ahead. I can put this on autoplay just like you might expect. Let's jump forward to that goal progress there. And here's that big red thing. This might be, especially with an executive audience, where I get stopped and someone asks a question. Now I can click, and there, this is an interactive drill-in. You can see that progress update field is great for explaining why we might be behind on this progress update and what we have planned for 2022. It answers perfectly a lot of those questions and maybe creates a more insightful discussion. Once I would click away from that, that would close, and then I'd go right back to my presentation. If anyone, by the way, you see this link, is a member of my AHA Roadmaps account, they can click View in AHA and open a new tab and see the actual record in all its glory with all its fields and answer all their questions right there. But of course, anyone not in my account can only see what I want them to see, which is a focused look at things. Okay, audience, build, context. This sort of context and the visible field we saw before, very, very useful for helping to guide our audience toward a particular message. This looks really good for a leadership presentation. Let's move on here to the customer presentation. And you remember our 3 steps: audience, build, context. We're going to start here with audience. This is for end users, customers, and external audience who tend to like any upcoming functionality, any high-level themes for the next year, and of course, any way you can show that they've contributed to your roadmap. So with that audience step, first things first, let's add a theme. You remember from our leadership presentation, the footer there mentions internal use. For a customer presentation, I probably still want those branded colors, but that footer doesn't really apply. Let's talk about the corporate presentation theme here. And you'll note that confidential is down in the footer instead of internal use. You could personalize these even more if you like, but that's just showing that even though these have the same branding, they apply to different audiences. So I have different themes, and you can see that many different presentations are using these particular themes, saving us a lot of work because we would have to do this from scratch every time. Let's jump up to grid view again and look at that theme. I see blank slide. We'll address that in a minute with the build step, but otherwise, let's talk about the audience step, the overall flow I want from my audience here. Same sort of thing. I've got an agenda, but instead of looking at strategy down to tactics, that sort of wide to narrow funnel, I thought it might be more useful to look at this chronologically. So as 2021 comes to a close, I'll walk my audience through the year that just was, and then we'll talk about 2022, the year to come. And then finally, let's pretend I'm presenting to a particular customer, maybe someone in my partner portal who's one of our most important customers. I can talk about what's coming specifically for them, what's on our roadmap that really applies to, in this case, someone called Aerocycle. That seems like a great way to move from past to future to the individual here. Okay, this looks good from an audience perspective. Let's now talk about the builds. Remember our 3 steps: ABC, audience, build, context, and we'll talk about how we structure this and how we continue to structure it. These 2 slides here are both about themes, and what these are is epics. Epics are a different record type than goals, initiatives, and releases. Epics are about large themes of work that might be released several different times. Progress might release towards those epics several different times across the year, and they're particularly fitting for customers because they provide that high-level roadmap. So for 2022, here's what we have planned in our records. Put this in a nice pivot table, use the branded company color right there, and also paired it with some 2021 epics. That's a good way to provide something comparative. We've got a blank slide here for the 2022 releases, so let's add an AHA view. And this can just literally be the Gantt that I'm working off of. Or in this case, I think it might be more useful to select a features roadmap, and I'll show you why here. This one is called the, a couple of keys there. I can pull up contextually the right features roadmap, which would be this one right here. And this is a features roadmap. If you haven't seen one before, I've got every column is a different release, and then all the features within that release. And then you're just seeing some general release dates there, which is actually pretty important. In AHA roadmaps, there's 2 types of release dates. One is internal, which is a very specific day that you and your team are bound and determined to release a thing. And one is called an external release date, which might be the more general time frame that you disclose to someone who's an end user or someone in sales or someone you don't want to promise an actual day of the week to. And in fact, let's go look at this. Remember, I've been talking about these views as connections to living pages within your AHA Roadmaps account. You can click in, press this Edit View button here, and see that living connection right here. Here's the same roadmap as if I just created it by going up to Roadmaps and clicking down on Features. A couple different things to point out here that are particular to Features roadmaps and particular to AHA presentations. The first is the customized view dropdown. You notice we're using external dates there. I'm just showing folks at a month level. Here's where they can expect to see enhanced notifications, for example. Could come probably in March of 2022. I could up that to Q2 of 2022 if I wasn't that confident. Another thing to show here is this checkbox. Once I click or unclick that, I can choose whether that particular feature is shown in presentations. That's really useful because sometimes your releases include things like bug fixes that aren't really customer facing, or internal audits, or tech debt, or anything that is not germane to a customer facing roadmap presentation. You can control that right here at the feature level. Save my changes there, jump back into my presentation, and there's the whole view without those little drop downs of features not shown in the presentation. Okay, that's one features roadmap. I want to show you one more because I think they're so nice and powerful. And this is the Aerocycle feature. So remember, in this presentation, we're starting out talking about the year in review. We move on to talk about the year to come, 2022, and then we're focusing on Aerocycle, a particular customer who wants to have a contextual product roadmap presentation. Normally that's fairly difficult to do. It involves a lot of custom fields and pivot tables and then a whole bunch of other stuff to try to get something that's personalized just for a particular customer. In AHA Roadmaps, thanks to a couple go-to-markets last spring, this is now a very smooth and dare I say it, enjoyable process to be able to customize a roadmap presentation for your customer with the advent of something called an organization. So organizations in AHA Roadmaps are a way to gather all your customers' feedback or most cared about work items in one place. You can tag something with a particular organization. In this case, it would be tagged with Aerocycle. Let me show you again in that edit view button. You can see I've got the organizations drop down. So on any of these features, if any of these have been tagged as being important to Aerocycle, then they will show up in this filtered roadmaps presentation. This is literally a filter to add and a button to click, and I have that personalized thing. And then I can go ahead and customize it even further and show maybe the status, unless that's not something I want to show on the releases or the features level. Show progress towards something, add any other custom field. I can personalize this with just a couple clicks from all that living data, and especially for a team that's working at scale across hundreds or maybe thousands of features, this is just a wonderful way to streamline the presentation. It really, this whole thing is an exercise in empathy, but as we're moving from build into context, it's a way to provide contextual presentation to my customer. Let's jump back in here. And you know, I feel pretty good about this build. We're finishing off with a sneak peek of an upcoming feature, which is a great thing to do. It's like dessert, the end of the presentation just before the discussion to get them excited about something coming. This looks like an update to a user dashboard in Fredman Cycling. Really useful. Let's talk about context. Because remember our 3 steps: ABC, audience, build, context. And in this case, let's look at drill-ins again. Let's click the customize presentation dropdown, click into interactive views, and I'm particularly thinking about Aerocycle, the customer I'm presenting to, and any way that I can provide them more detail. So down on the features record type, this is a pretty feature-heavy presentation. I'm going to add in description. I think that might be helpful. If they care about a particular feature, they probably would care about that level of detail as well, especially if it's something with that organization field that I can show links to their feedback and my roadmap. Let's try that out. Update the secure web page there. Let us pull all that new stuff. And speaking of new stuff, actually, before I show you the web page, you also have control over what's called the update frequency of a view. This is something else that's useful for context. And update frequency means this. I've inserted a view here, but of course, since this is a link to a living page in my roadmaps account, features could be closing or new features could be added, or work is happening even while I'm presenting. So I can control whether that work affects the views in my presentations. I can make this a manual snapshot, which means it looks great. This is a snapshot as of the 21st of October, because it's just like I want to show it to the audience. I can make it a live update, which means up to the minute accuracy of this presentation view, so that as we're making progress, maybe even during the presentation, this view will update, or something called refresh on update, which means I can click this refresh button and we'll pull the latest data from that report, roadmap, or record and display it here. This can be, this is kind of my favorite. Maybe just before I start my presentation, I can refresh the views to make sure it's up to the hour accurate, but I don't need things changing while I'm talking, that sort of thing. You can do this with any view that you've added in your presentation, and they help you as you move into that web page. Okay, let's click forward to those upcoming Aerocycle features and show drill in here as I'm providing a little bit of extra context. Okay, language options. This is a neat little feature. Maybe as I'm presenting the features roadmap to Aerocycle, they notice this green little check mark and want to know, what does that mean? It's not January 2022 yet. Does that mean you ship things early? They have a question. Well, remember with that drill in, we can provide contextual answers. So I'll click to open there. And yeah, you remember we added the features description to the fields that are visible when we're having an interactive drill in there. And so from here, I could expand and show everything about the feature description if I think they would benefit from that information. But even from this little sneak peek, they could see that yes, indeed, the item has shipped. It got a high score. It's 100% complete. Great way to remember customers care about that roadmap input. Talk about how Aerocycle has input on our roadmap. And we, in turn, at Fred Went Cycling are delivering valuable functionality early for them. This is a great little sneak peek, little early present for anyone on the Aerocycle team. When I'm done, I can click to close and just go back with my presentation. That is it. Audience, build, context. We've gone through, as you've seen today, 2 different presentations, same data, same goal pretty much to show what's happening in the Fred Went Cycling product roadmap, but ways with a couple simple tweaks and a lot of empathetic strategic planning prepared 2 very different roadmaps presentations. If you've got any questions about this, send an email over to support@aha.io. We'll get you taken care of. Or, of course, try this out in your own account. Once again, the way to get here is to jump over to the roadmaps bar, click on presentations, and that will get you down to your presentations overview. Thanks so much. Enjoy.